Shalom. I want to start out by giving all praise at foremost to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, Rakadish. Salutation to the elders and apostles of GMS groups, the ones that like teach 100% truth. Shalom, Barakathum to them. I want to start out by giving all praise to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahushua, Ba'ashem, Rakadish. Tonight's lessons, I'm going to talk about basically relating to powers and authorities and governments and pretty much compliance to that. I'm going to do some verses relating to 13, 1 through 7 of Romans, 1 Peter's 2, 13 through 17, and 1 Peter's 2, 13, 18 through 21, and Matthew's 5, 25. All right, let's begin. This is 13, 1 through 7 of Romans. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of Yahweh. The powers that be are ordained of Yahweh. So basically everything's ordained by a higher power that relates to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua ultimately. He's the one that set everything in place. Number 2. Whosoever therefore resisted the power, resisted the ordinance of Yahweh, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation. So anybody who goes against what was ordained by Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua, ultimately the consequence is damnation. Number 3. For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil wilt thou then not be afraid of power. Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. Number 4, for he is the minister of Yahweh to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid. So ones who are doing contrary to what they're supposed to be doing, there'll be consequence, like I said, like in number 2. For he beareth not the sword in vain, for he is the minister of Yahweh, the revenger to execute wrath upon him that do evil. Number 5, wherefore ye must need be subject, not only for wrath, but also for conscience sake. 6. For this cause pay ye tribute also, for they are Yahweh's ministers, attending continually upon the very thing. Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due. Example of that, whatever is Caesar, give to Caesar. Whatever is Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua, you give to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua. Let's read that again, that's a good one. Render therefore to all their dues, tribute to whom tribute is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor whom honor. And this relates all to submit to powers and authorities, of course with limitations, as long as it's not contrary ultimately to Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua's code of laws, which is the scriptures. And now basically those 7 verses relate to subject to government, powers, and authority. I'm going to read 1 Peter's 2:13 and 17. 1 Peter's 2:13 and 17. Submit yourselves to every ordinance of man for the Lord's sake, whether it be to the king as supreme, or into governors as into them that are sent by him for the punishment of evildoers, and for the praise of them that do well. For so is the will of Yahweh, that with well-doing ye may put to silence the ignorance of foolish men. 16. And free, and not using your liberty for cloak is that covering, of maliciousness, but as a servant of Yahweh. Basically, the grace period in time, for example, as we have now, using your time wisely, and most of all, using it with wisdom and wisdom and common sense, relating to ultimately spiritually, relating to getting to work and change, convert and change, repent and work your salvation with fear and trembling. You know what I mean? So this grace period and liberty time period, we need to be working your spiritual matters, building up your spiritual, your strength in your spirit. You know what I mean? Working matters relating to getting closer to Yahweh Shem Yahshua ultimately. So that was number 16. We'll read that again. As free and not using your liberty for a cloak of maliciousness, but as a servant of Yahweh. Honor all men, love the brotherhood, fear Yahweh, honor the king. The precept with that with Romans 13, 1 through 7, which I just read. And this talks about submission to the government, powers, and authorities, man. I'm going to read first of Peter 2, 18 through 21. Servants, be subject to your masters with all fear, not only to good and gentle, but also to the froward. Froward is somebody pretty much is very difficult to deal with. Number 19. For this is thankworthy, if a man for conscience towards Yahweh endure grief, suffering, and wrongfully. 20. For what glory is it if, when ye be buffeted for your faults, ye shall take it patiently, but if, when ye do well and suffer for it, ye take it patiently, this is acceptable Yahweh. It's basically enduring. You know what I mean? Enduring. Number 21. For even hereunto were ye called, because Yahweh Hamashiach also suffered for us, leaving us an example that ye should follow his steps. And this relates to ultimately pretty much obeying your masters. I don't like using that word master because it reminds me of slavery, but obeying ones who are in charge, bosses, and that's what that relates to. You know, submission to your powers of authority, ones who have the power and position. You know, ones in a position of power or authority. You know, and that was 1 Peter 2 and 18. It all basically boils down to submit to governments, powers and authorities, and compliance. You know what I mean? For example, of that with a face mask. So you go in certain areas where it requires you to wear a face mask, you wear it. You know? Or for example, if a police officer tells you, for example, that video where that kid, he didn't comply with the cops. And that's a big thing with Jakes, you know what I mean? Now, each situation may be different, each circumstance may be different accordingly, but for the most part, a lot of times, reason why sometimes they get in tussles or in complicated situations with cops, because they're most of the time, some of the times, not all the time, because of being non-compliant. You know what I mean? They don't comply. You know what I mean? Ultimately, that leads to escalations on their side, on the police side, where they have to do and react a certain way. And to minimize that you want to try to comply to the best of your ability relating to certain matters. And it's all about Matthew 10 and 16. Be wise as, I'm going to send you in the midst of a woods, be wise as a serpent, harmless as a dove. It's about using discretion and using common sense. And most of all, being not a threat, or being not a threat, you know. So you wanna have I guess a more a non-threatful demeanor, You know what I mean? Where you don't pose yourselves as optically as a threat. Or, because we're in a society where, unfortunately from the optics, certain things are prejudged unfairly. You know what I mean? So, and that's another lesson itself. But for the most part, it's about compliance. If you can comply, it makes it easier on you. And if they tell you to do something, do it. You know what I mean? For the most part. You know what I mean? They're still in the position of authority and power. You know what I mean? So you have to respect their position of power. Plus, they have the weapon. You know what I mean? And a lot of them won't hesitate to use it. This message goes more for the younger generation, Jakes, because they're the ones that encounter these kind of circumstances the most. So comply to the best. For example, if they want you to move or go somewhere else, don't argue with them. Go somewhere else. Whatever you have to do where you don't get caught up, where you can leave and vacate the situation, and, where you don't have no problems on either side, man. Just go ahead and move and go to somewhere else. For example, hypothetically, we use that for that guy who was trying to preach the word, for example. You know what I mean? He was really harassed because he was told to move. He didn't comply with the police officer. The police officer had to react a certain way. He probably mouthed and lipped off because a lot of the younger generations don't like cops. I get it, historically. But for the most part, he probably lipped off, you know what I mean, and gave the cop a hard time. So the cop probably did something. It depends on how the police officers react. Some are, they're different. It's just some cops react differently. I didn't want to get off topic too much on this, but, for the reality is, it's about compliance. They're in a position of authority. So comply to it. If they want you to do certain things, for the most part, comply to it. There's limitations, of course. But for the most part, the Lord ordained certain peoples in this kingdom to rule over us, and we are subject to follow accordingly to the policies, procedures, and laws and doctrines. We under this kingdom relating to the lands of the law, the laws of the land. So we had to comply and obey accordingly. That's just good common sense. All right, let's continue on. Now I'm going to read 525 Matthews. That'll make the point. Agree with thine adversary quickly while thou art in the way with him, lest at any time the adversary delivers thee to judge, and the judge deliver thee to the officer, and thou be cast into prison. Verily I say unto you, thou shalt by no means come out thence until thou has paid the uttermost farthing. A farthing is what? Farthing is a form of a bronze monetary United Kingdom or Great Britain coin that was used, and it was withdrawn in 1961. It is equivalent to a quarter or a penny. It pretty much is a bronze coin used in Great Britain. Another definition is the least possible amount of something. So it's the least amount of something as well. Second definition. And that relates to pretty much agree with thy adversary. Like I was saying, agree with thy adversary, and don't give your adversary don't give your adversary any form to do anything beyond what they should do. That's very important, especially for relating to certain matters with dealing with authorities, specifically police, for example, because we see a history relating to Jakes, and some are, in this individual case by case, and for the most part, it's a lot of us under the curses. I can go on and on with this, but the point is, comply with your adversary. The adversary is in a position of power. This is their rulership. This is their kingdom. This is their policy relates to the laws. So follow it. It's good common sense, and it's wise to do. And it might even save your life. And that being said, this is all I'm gonna talk about relating to subjects to governments and authorities and powers. Give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahshua, Ba'Shem Rakadish. Salutation to the elders and the apostles of GMS groups and ones alike teaching 100% truth. Shalom and barakathum to them. Give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahshua, Ba'Shem Rakadish. The water, shalom, thanks.